Hi there, Daily Gardeners. Just really quick before today's show, I wanted to let you know that I will be the keynote speaker at the Friends of the State Botanical Garden of Georgia. It's their annual meeting in Athens, Georgia on March 25th at 7 p.m. I'm going to be giving a presentation on some of the women who have influenced botanical illustration and botanical porcelain. Now, if you have been to the garden recently, you've probably noticed a few additions. One of those is the brand new Porcelain and Decorative Arts Museum at the Center for Art and Nature right next to the Visitor Center. One of the reasons that this almost 9,000 square foot state-of-the-art facility is so special is that it's the first of its kind to integrate decorative arts in a garden setting to celebrate nature. Now, if you're interested in going, please check today's show notes. There'll be a link there. You can also see it in the Daily Gardener community over in Facebook, so you can see it in the Facebook group. And I'll also put a link to it in the newsletter that comes out on Friday. So I'll be putting links all over the place. And please, by all means, feel free to email me and let me know if you do decide to attend, because I think it would be really fun to have some Daily Gardeners in the audience. And I know I'm going to have a little bit of free time, so it would be cool to get the chance to connect with you. Maybe we can tour the gardens together or grab a coffee. And again, this is on March 25th at the State Botanical Garden of Georgia in Athens. Today's episode is brought to you by the Daily Gardener Friday newsletter. You can sign up for the newsletter over at thedailygardener.org. Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, a podcast featuring garden history and literature. I'm Jennifer Ebling, and today is March 3rd. Today in garden history, we celebrate the birthday of the English poet and politician who was one of the longest-serving members in the English House of Commons, Edmund Waller, who was born on this day in 1606. Edmund is remembered for his Carpe Diem, or Seize the Day poem called Go Lovely Rose, which debuted in 1645. In the poem, the rose must relay an urgent message that time is short, that she is beautiful, and that he loves her. An excerpt goes like this. Go, lovely rose, tell her that wastes her time and me, that now she knows when I resemble her to thee, how sweet and fair she seems to be. And today is also the birthday of the Flemish physician and botanist Mathias de Wheldale, who was born on this day, March 3rd in 1616. Matthias practiced medicine in England, and he was the first botanist to recognize the difference between monocots and dicots. And today we remember Matthias de Wheldale with the lobelia plant. Now, before researching Matthias, I pronounced lobelia as lobelia. But now, knowing the French pronunciation of his name, I will say it lobelia. It's a subtle change, lo versus lu. But after all, the plant is named in Matthias's honor. So lobelia it is. Now, for as lovely as the lobelia is, the common names for lobelia are terribly unattractive. They include names like asthmaweed, bladderpod, gagroot, pukeweed, vomitwort, and wild tobacco. That's actually the least offensive name in my book. But these common names for lobelia reflect the fact that lobelia is very toxic to eat. Now, despite its toxicity, lobelia is one of the sweetest looking plants for your summer containers. This dainty annual comes in pink, light blue, and royal blue. And personally, every year I buy 2 flats of the light blue lobelias. But no matter the color that you choose, lobelias are a favorite of pollinators. Those delicate blossoms frequently host bees, butterflies, and moths, which only adds to their charm. And today we wish a happy heavenly birthday to Muriel Wheldale Onslow. The English biochemist was born on this day, March 3rd, back in 1880. She researched flower color inheritance and pigment molecule biochemistry. Muriel married a fellow biochemist named Victor Onslow. Victor was actually the son of royalty. His dad was the 4th Earl of Onslow. When Victor was a student at Cambridge, he was paralyzed from the waist down after diving off a cliff into a lake. But it didn't matter to Muriel. And even though they were married for only a little over 3 years before Victor's untimely death, Victor and Muriel's love story was one of mutual admiration and respect. When Muriel recorded her memoir of Victor, she wrote that he was a man of amazing courage and mental vitality, and that he was an inspiration to their peers in biochemistry. Muriel worked with snapdragons, which happened to come in a range of flower colors, including green. There's also red, orange, yellow, white, purple, and pink, and now even bicolor and speckled. But they were the perfect flower for Muriel's work, and her coloration research resulted in 4 major papers on snapdragon color inheritance, and those papers gained Muriel worldwide recognition. In 2010, the Royal Institution in England sponsored a play about 4 female biochemists. One of those women was Muriel Onslow, and the name of the play was Blooming Snapdragons. Snapdragons, or Antirrhinum majus, their Latin name, are a beloved cottage garden flower. They're a cousin to the foxglove, and snapdragons are happiest when they're planted early in cool weather. They will bloom their little hearts out all summer long. Then if you cut them back in August, you might get lucky and get a second flush of color in the fall. Cross your fingers. All right, and today is also the birthday of the Russian and Soviet novelist Yury Karlovich Olesha, who was born on this day, March 3rd, in 1899. Yury was part of the Odessa School of Writers, and he is considered one of the greatest Russian novelists of the 20th century. Here's an excerpt from his book, Envy, which debuted in 1927. Once he raised his arm to show his friends the back of his hand, where the veins were laid out in the shape of a tree. And he broke out in the following improvisation. Here, he said, is the tree of life. Here is a tree that tells me more about life and death than the flowering and fading of tree gardens. I don't remember when exactly I discovered that my wrist was blooming like a tree, but it must have been during that wonderful time when the flowering and fading of trees still spoke to me, not of life and death, but of the end and beginning of the school year. It was blue then, this tree, blue and slender, and turned my metacarpus's entire landscape into a Japanese watercolor. The years passed, I changed, and the tree changed too. It became gnarled and reddish-brown, and therein lay its strength. But now, my friends, how decrepit it is, how rotten. The branches seem to be breaking off. Cavities have appeared. It's sclerosis, my friends. And the fact that the skin is getting glassy and the tissue beneath it is squishy. Isn't this a fog settling on the tree of my life? The fog that will soon envelop all of me. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Terrain by Greg Lemkuhl. This book came out in 2018, and the subtitle is Ideas and Inspiration for Decorating the Home and Garden. And yes, in case you're wondering, this is the same terrain as in the historic nursery set in southeast Pennsylvania, and Greg happens to work for Terrain. Terrain is a nationally renowned garden, home, and lifestyle brand with its own signature approach to living with nature. It's an approach that bridges the gap between home and garden, the indoors and the outdoors. And it's an approach that embraces decorating with plants and inviting the garden into every living space. And it's that blurring of the outdoors and the indoors that makes this book such a delight for gardeners. This book is loaded with gorgeous photos for ideas, projects, tips, and applications. There are tons of ideas for flower arranging that go way beyond simple bouquets. You'll learn to use branches and wild natural elements like a pro. And those are great skills to have if you're trying to bring nature indoors. There are also beautiful container gardens, wreaths for all seasons, preservation tips with glycerin, forcing branches, perfect for this time of year, decorating with natural elements, and so many doable, gorgeous ideas for every season of the year. This book is a whopping 400 pages of a masterclass on decorating with nature and bringing the best of the garden indoors. You can get a copy of Terrain by Greg Limkuhl and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $10. But hurry if you want a copy at that price, because those used copies go quickly. All right, we'll wrap things up today with a botanic spark that features the British poet Edward Thomas. He was born on this day, March 3rd, in 1878. Edward's mentor was Robert Frost, and a trip to see Robert inspired Edward's most famous poem called October. Like Henry David Thoreau, Edward loved simplicity in his work and life. And there are two verses of Edward's that I wanted to share with you today from two different poems. The first is from his poem called Cherry Trees. Edward wrote, "The cherry trees bend over and are shedding on the old road where all that past are dead. Their petals strewing the grass as for a wedding, this early May morn when there is none to wed." The second excerpt is from his poem called The Manor Farm, which was written in 1878. Over the land, freckled with snow half thawed, the speculating rooks at their nests cawed, and saw from elm tops, delicate as flowers of grass, what we below could not see. Winter pass. Well, that's it for today's show. Just remember that you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. The next time you're over at Facebook, just search for Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend and then request to join. And if you'd like more of The Daily Gardener, you can subscribe to the newsletter over at thedailygardener.org. And don't forget that you can also show your support for the show by using the Buy Me a Coffee link over at the website or in today's show notes. This is Jennifer Ebling. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.